Hi, my name is Jason Clark. I'm an extension specialist here at South Dakota State University, and today we're going to talk a little bit more about the nitrogen cycle and how we can use different fertilizers to help us decrease the amount of nitrogen we could potentially lose during the season. So in a previous video, we've gone over in depth the nitrogen cycle here, where we looked at adding nitrogen such as urea to the soil, how it can be lost through volatilization, how then it can be lost through nitrate leaching as it moves down through the soil profile, and again how it can be lost if it gets volatilized back out through as nitrous oxide or as N2 gas. In our previous video, we talked a lot about urease and nitrification inhibitors and where the role that they play in the nitrogen cycle and how we can use them. In this one, we're going to be talking about other methods such as slow-release fertilizers and split applications. So we'll just go over a quick couple definitions of what a slow-release and what a controlled-release fertilizer are. They're very close. They both have to do with basically a slow-release fertilizer has a complex compound around it that breaks down, such as sulfur-coated urea. Once that coat breaks down, then it releases nitrogen. Controlled-release fertilizers are those that have a coat around them. The water diffuses in and then goes out. So just an example of these in these next few slides here. If we look at our field and we're going to go out there with our tractor and we're going to apply that fertilizer to the soil surface, and then we're going to get a rain or till it in, or we're going to leave it on that soil surface, and that fertilizer is going to be incorporated down into the soil. So we're looking at slow release fertilizers such as a sulfur coated fertilizer. What happens is that urea has a coat around it of sulfur, and that coat will eventually break down. Water will enter into that coat. It'll create a water nitrogen solution, and that coat will then eventually go out, and that water will diffuse out into the soil and become available to the crop throughout the growing season. So it's not all available right at once if we just had plain urea, but it slowly becomes available as it gets released from that granular over time. So if we look on the other side here and look at controlled release fertilizers, these have a flexible polymer coating where the water diffuses in, creates a nitrogen water solution, and then based on temperature, that will diffuse back out into the soil over time. And really what this is doing is it's not getting all the nitrogen available right as soon as you apply it, but it's delaying it, which is typically when corn or other crops need it. They don't need it right early in the season, but they need it a little bit later. So that delay helps it be there and helps it have less chance for loss during the high rainfall period of the season. Speaking of rainfall, that goes to our next thing of how we can use knowledge of nitrogen cycle and knowledge of weather to make better nitrogen management decisions. So here we're looking at splitting a nitrogen fertilizer application. So here we have a graph of winter rainfall. You can see this line here. This is typical rainfall pattern across the year, starting in winter, going in summer, peaking in that spring and summer time period. However, we can contrast that to a lot of spring rainfalls now. We're starting to get more rainfall even earlier. But if we contrast that to when our crop is taking it up with this blue line right here, that blue line is even more delayed compared to when we're getting that rainfall. So we're getting rainfall earlier, and then our crop needs it later. If we compare that to this green line here, we actually need nitrogen later, because this green line represents when that crop is taking up nitrogen during the season. So you can see how much delay that is from when we typically get rainfall to when we actually need that nitrogen to be taken up by the plant. And if we think about when we usually apply nitrogen, it's right here early on in the season before we're planting. So the high rainfall, low crop water uptake, low crop nitrogen uptake. So what happens because of this is we have these high periods in the spring and again in the fall where we tend to lose a lot of nitrogen because we have lots of rainfall, but the crop's not taking up the water. So what splitting up the application does is we put some on at planting where that first star is, and we put the second one closer to where we actually need that nitrogen fertilizer when it's actually going to be utilized by the plant. So that can hopefully limit this period right here of how much nitrogen can be lost. So that's it for today. Those are the two segments. We're looking at controlled release and slow release fertilizers, as well as splitting that application up of how it can help us better manage that nitrogen and keep it in the soil for our plants. Thank you for your time.